Network. My name is Fernando, aka the Lone Star Halo, joined here by a voice you probably haven't heard before. He goes by William. Pending on the last name, we'll figure it out. It might be Cannoli, it might not. But anyway, William, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. The thing that I always hate about podcasts, and I say this all the time, you normally have like 10 or so minutes before you push record where you're having like a full-fledged conversation. So you kind of always get the pleasantries out of the way. And like by the time you're recording, you always kind of instinctually go, "Hey, how's your day going?" Even though like I already know like your goldfish diet or whatever.
Well, you just put that evil on me like that.
Do you have a goldfish?
No.
Well, now you got to buy a goldfish. And if it does die, we'll blame something else. We'll blame Tony Stewart, your favorite race car driver of all time.
I wish I had audio so you could see how displeased I am with that statement.
Oh, you mean video?
Oh yeah, sorry. You
All we
know,
have is audio.
yeah. Uh you might have to cut this out, but he's fucking the person he hired to drive his NHRA car.
I didn't even know he was doing NHRA now.
Oh yeah. Good time to stop following the sport.
Well, there you go. Sorry, John Force and Co. William is out because of Tony Stewart. So today we're here to talk about a specific topic. We'll touch a little bit about like the Super Bowl, and that ties to like a bigger thing. Real quick, I want your opinion because I haven't asked you about this. So the whole Taylor Swift and NFL thing, like honestly, at this point, it's like the National Taylor League. I'm sure you've seen it. It's all over social media. Are you tired of it, or like do you at least understand why the NFL is doing it to try to grow their audience? And I mean, it's obviously working.
So I'll say this. I don't watch games. I don't look up the scores, nothing like that. All right. But I was curious the other day about the NBA score. So I Google searched scores, nothing else. All right. The top 15 stories all came up that Kelsey made a touchdown after she was there. And I was just like, dude, who the hell gives a crap if she's there for a touchdown or not? She's seen him play the game multiple times. So yeah, I am completely over it, and I don't even watch football. I'm sure if I was watching and I had to deal with that, I would be so upset. And the worst thing is, I like Taylor Swift a lot. She's in my playlist more than once, but god damn, do we not need to have anything to do with outside of the sport anymore?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll say this. Okay, and people will most sports fans, like true sports fans, are annoyed about the Taylor Swift coverage, but I'm going to say this. Whether you love or hate it, you have an opinion on it. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about WWE a little bit later and how it has to do with our topic. But think about it. With something like wrestling, all you ever want to do is you want people to have an opinion on you. And
Yeah,
it's almost that exact same thing. The NFL doesn't care if you like it or not. But the fact that you and I are sitting here wasting our oxygen talking about it, and people are posting about it, and people are tweeting or whatever, Xing now about how annoyed they are about it, tells you that they're winning because they're dominating headlines one way or the other.
yeah, for sure. They're making a lot of money off of that just in Kelsey freaking jersey sales alone. But the thing is, I think it's a short-term win, long-term loss because what's slowly happening now is that people are tuning in who genuinely don't give a shit about football. And they're hoping that some of the people, and I'm not going to even specify women only because Taylor has a huge fan base of men as well. So let's say they're expecting, 15% of the people who are there just for Taylor to start paying attention to the games and start voting for him and start liking him. What's happening is now you're taking away from the fans who just actually care and want to see the game. So when Taylor's not there, you're not making any money. And she's only going to be at one game a week if she's even at the game, because who knows her schedule. So you're losing out on all the people who actually care and you're turning them off. And when they eventually break up, because you know what's going to happen, or he retires and she's just not there anymore, you are going to be suffering because all the people that were actual fans that would watch a freaking really slow game between, RG3 and Johnny Manziel, they're not going to be coming around anymore. So I think they really have to cool it. But of course, it's going to be the Super Bowl. And wow, if the 49ers actually win, that would be insane.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. Like, I don't know if they're gonna break up. And I'll say this, like I'm not gonna say I'm a Taylor Swift fan. I'm not gonna say I'm a Taylor Swift hater. She's there. You know what I mean? I'm almost like the same thing you do. Like, if a Taylor Swift comes on like on the radio, why am I listening to the radio? Like, what's going wrong in my life that I'm listening to the radio? And B, I'm not gonna be like, ugh, and like immediately change the channel. I don't really listen to music too much on my phone. I'm much more of a podcast guy now, especially because I work alone. So I kind of like crave that human interaction, you know what I mean, when I'm working. So I really I enjoy the podcast more so than like listening to music. But if a Taylor Swift song comes on shuffle on my phone, I'm probably not going to immediately change it either. But I also only have like 10 out of, the thousands of songs. But anyway, I think the NFL is milking the right cow right now. They're striking the iron while it's hot. You can't blame them because, let's just say they're still dating next year or the year after that. People are just kind of aren't going to care anymore. Like it's old news. They're just another Hollywood couple. As of right now, they're the Hollywood couple because she's arguably like the hottest pop culture icon at the current second. You really can't argue that she's worth $1 billion for a reason, I guess.
Yeah, no, definitely. Let me ask you though, out of those 10 songs in your playlist, how many of them are about a guy that she's no longer with?
I don't know. So you and I went to middle school together, and I guess I won't disclose that. Like the not that it really matters. The school's not around anymore.
Yeah, that shit
But
got shut down.
yeah, yeah, was it for tax evasion? Was it for money? Who knows? Probably for other things. But anyway, um, I don't know if you remember at one of our dances, one of the girls, and I won't say her name either, out of respect. We'll call her Shelby. Shelby singing the song White Horse at the top of her lungs as she's like about to like not cry, but like she was getting emotional as we were like all like dancing to this song. Do you remember that? This
Yeah,
was after. Okay, okay,
that was my first dance with my first ever true girlfriend. So yeah, I remember that pretty well.
okay. Fair enough. And I'm sure you also remember me and we'll call him Nathaniel singing "Let It Rock" by Kevin Rudolph on a microphone.
I don't know that song, so it doesn't stand out. I'd probably have to
Okay.
hear it again.
All right, yeah, probably for the best you don't remember. But yeah, no, I don't exactly know how many songs I have that are about another guy, but I mean, I would assume maybe White Horse is about another dude. I have Love Story, You Belong with Me. So like a lot of like her older stuff, as far as the newer stuff, I don't think I have anything off her new album. Um,
Yeah, that's fair.
yeah, so okay, so that's enough about the NTL, the National Taylor League. Let's talk a little bit about the subject that we wanted to talk about because that's just going to lead to an absolute snowball effect. That's when I'm really worried that we're going to just start spiraling because this is probably like a series we can do for weeks. So you wanted to talk about like scripting in sports. Now, I think it's ridiculous to think that like Roger Goodell is sitting there planning every single little facet of the NFL season. I'm sure you remember those old Buffalo Wild Wings commercials where like the sprinklers went off, so like the quarterback got sprayed in the face, or he got like sacked or whatever. We're not here saying that kind of stuff is happening, but you always see people complaining about like the refs making calls for one side but not the other. And there's actual factual evidence in some cases. I also think there's human error, right? So of course that's going to happen, but there also has to be bias, right? Do you personally think that kind of stuff leads to people believing that these games are rigged?
Hold on, Fernando. A little note for who has ever edited. I apologize. I thought I was muting myself, and I was muting myself on a different thing. So every time I went to burp or scratch or something, I was muting myself, and that's still in here. So yeah, my bad. I apologize.
I haven't really been able to hear you much, so.
Okay, cool. All right. Anyway, so I think no one can argue after that one Lions game against the Cowboys that the refs had an effect on the outcome. And I don't know if I'm willing to say that it's 100% scripted, but clearly they had a winner in mind and they were going to make sure they got that win how they wanted it. So whether it's just game by game or if it had an effect on who's going to play in the first round of the playoffs, whatever, I think there's very obviously now no way to avoid that it's not pure. And everybody wants it to be pure. So when you find out the smallest little thing, it can absolutely get blown out of proportion. And I do subscribe to the theory that there is tampering in every single game, at least past the halfway point of the season. But one thing I am never going to agree on is that the NFL would be as blatantly obvious as to make the colors of the Super Bowl logo the two teams that are going to go in. That's a little out there.
Okay, so you didn't believe that it was going to be the 49ers and the Ravens like everybody was saying? Because I mean, I'm sure you saw the photos. People were like, "Oh, the 49ers colors, the Ravens colors." And I think there was
Yeah.
like a leaked image that said it was going to be the 49ers versus the Ravens and people were like, "Oh my God."
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah, no, I'm not willing to go that far, but I think it's pretty impossible to believe that it's a pure sport anymore.
Well, I mean, think about this. For the longest time of our lives, and I mean, for the longest time of like, people our dad's ages, there was no home team that won a Super Bowl, right? It wasn't until 2020 when the Buccaneers won in Tampa Bay, right? That was like the COVID year. And then in 2021, the Rams won in LA, right?
Yeah.
Wait, did the Rams win in LA?
Yes, they did.
Okay, so as of right now, those are the only two teams that have won at home. Don't you think because I mean that was what Super Bowl like we were like in the 40s already, right? No, we were like in the 50s. We were like 55-ish when that started to happen. You don't think in the other 50 plus years they would have scripted it so a home team would have won, for ratings or whatever?
No, I don't. Here's the two reasons. If so, I don't believe that the Rams one was scripted because there was just terrible calling either way. And we can go into that if we want, because I got a lot to say about that game. I remember that game really well. It's probably the last game I actually watched all the way through.
Yeah, I can
But
agree with that. Yeah. I even watched the
if
halftime show. That was great.
Oh hell yeah. Anyway, if there is any scripting on the one that the Buccaneers won at home, it's because of Brady. It's not because of Tampa. It's not because of anything else. If there's scripting on the Rams win in their stadium, it's because they have to try to justify a brand new $6.5 million stadium. So I don't think it's necessarily the home team, but there could absolutely be other, forces to justify that. And I think the only way that we can really say for sure that happens is if the Raiders suddenly, even if they only get to the Super Bowl, because they've had pretty dismal franchise as of late. So if they get to the Super Bowl, then I think that shows some definite favoritism at least.
Yeah, I mean, a lot's going to have to go right for them. And
Yeah.
I guess wrong for the NFL for them to get to that point because, I mean, like you said, really, this entire millennium has just not been for them at all. They've
Yeah.
had almost no playoff success. I mean, you can kind of one hand, how many times they made the playoffs this millennium?
I don't know, but I'll tell you how many times they beat that Chargers ass. I remember those games.
That's fair. I mean, growing up in San Diego, I mean, that's another thing that maybe I should bring you back for. We can talk about what it was like in San Diego, growing up in San Diego during Chargers games, because there was definitely a big difference about the town dash city, depending what part of town you lived in, watching like Chargers games like in 2004 and how the fans reacted compared to like what 2016 by the time they moved. There was a giant difference living in San Diego. So I think that'd be a whole nother interesting topic.
There's
But
so many topics you could come up right there. I mean, how Qualcomm got treated, how the fans loved LT and then talked mass shit about LT. Same thing they did with Hoffman. I mean, there's so many more options to talk
the
about on
difference
that.
is like the Padres fans have now like embraced Hoffman again because now he like works for their front office or whatever. He's kind of a figurehead for them. when, the Charger fans still haven't really re-embraced LT, but the difference is, they're the LA Chargers now, so maybe that's part of it. But yeah, you know what? I'm sure I can almost promise now that we'll probably do a couple episodes on that because I think you and I have a lot to say about that kind of stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so the other thing that you talked about before we recorded, you wanted to talk about like, okay, let's pretend that in the future, 2 years, 5 years, whatever amount of time away, we find out that actually sports are scripted. Okay, the NFL, the NBA, MLB, whatever. These sports actually were scripted the whole time. You know, they wanted to finagle their way around so that the 49ers were going to win this year's Super Bowl. You know, would you still watch? So let me present that to you. If you found out in some capacity sports were scripted, would you still watch?
I think it really depends, and this is really interesting to talk about because for baseball, there's no way in hell I'm going to devote the time. I don't care if they make other rule changes and make the game only last, 90 minutes. There's no way in hell I'm going to devote time to that middle stretch before the All-Star break to watch a game that they already know what the outcome is on TV. I mean, there's just no way in hell. Now, would I actually still go to the game in person? And that's what I'm not sure about. I think clear across the board, if we know for a fact everything is predetermined, no matter what sport, I don't think I'm giving it the time of day on social media or in TV. But in person, I think that still has a good debate of you knowing your team's going to lose. Are you still going to spend money to watch that? And I think it really, really depends.
Yeah, and the biggest thing that would be a problem is what about like sports gambling and what would it mean for something like that?
Yeah, definitely. I think there, like we're talking about, there's already been proof that there's been tampering, whether if it's the NFL or just in FIFA, right? So
Yes.
I'm sure there are people that have lost literal fortunes on sports gambling.
Oh, 100%.
And if it came out, like let's say you're the son of, wealthy McFuckface who just lost everything, and then it comes out that game was predetermined, how pissed off would you be?
I am immediately filing a lawsuit. Like, I'm not kidding, because it's like, would you have grounds for a lawsuit? I would say probably, yeah,
Yeah,
because
definitely.
it was rigged. You know what I mean? It's like you didn't even give my team, the team that I picked. I mean, it didn't even have to be your team. And I know you're a big Daniel Tosh guy. What do he always used to say? Never gamble with your heart. So he would
Yeah.
always like pick like the Patriots to win against his Dolphins. But yeah, the point is, dude, I would be pissed. Let's
Oh
just
yeah.
say, your dad mortgages the house. You hear that kind of thing all the time. Bets the car, and you guys lose as a family, group, whatever. Yeah, of course I'm gonna be pissed.
Yeah. But how far can you actually take that? Because you are betting. No one is making you bet, right? So
That's
I
true.
don't know. I also in today's world, you can pretty much sue for any damn thing and you have a case. So who knows what would actually happen? But I don't know. I feel like especially if it was the NFL, they'd be able to still win that. So as far as sports betting goes, I think if we find out everything is, you know, scripted, you have to just completely remove all sports betting. And that's why, if it actually is scripted, we will never ever know because they will never ever do anything to risk them losing all the money that comes in from betting. I mean, just think about fantasy baseball and football. Yahoo probably was kept alive during 2020 just because of fantasy football and baseball profits. You know, that is a huge factor in if we'll ever get to know the truth in that, and I don't think we ever will because they're not going to sacrifice that huge chunk of income.
That's fair. Now, you and I had talked before, and I wanted to bring this point up. So I had told you that I think that I can answer the whole like, hey, if we find out it was scripted, would you still watch? Because I watch wrestling. Now I'm not going to say that I religiously watch wrestling because there's people who watch, There's 3 WWE episodes a week. They watch that. They watch, the competitors. So, I mean, watching wrestling can be a full-time job because there's so much content of it. I guess I would say I'm a little more casual in terms of like Monday Night Raw, SmackDown, those kind of weekly shows. I maybe watch like 5 of those a year. I watch probably half the pay-per-views. So, like I said, I'm a very casual follower, but I still watch and I still know that stuff's scripted. But the difference is I'm watching that knowing it's scripted, knowing that it's supposed to be entertainment. I love baseball and I love hockey. At the end of the day, those are really the sports that I care about. So it does complicate it, right? Like let's just say I'm watching baseball and the Angels for 10 straight years haven't made the playoffs. Am I angry as a fan knowing that I'm paying for season tickets for an entire year? Because I had Angel season tickets for like 5 years. And I was spending all that money, all that time driving 90 minutes to a game, driving 90 minutes back just to purposely watch this team lose. That's where it starts to get dicey and that's where it starts to get iffy.
Absolutely. And I think, let's say, not even using you as an example, let's say you had season tickets for 1 year and you literally live in the house that is the closest to the stadium. So it doesn't really put you out. And let's even say somehow you had some Anaheim discount and you got the season tickets for half price. Even knowing all that, going to watch what is supposed to be two of the best players consistently losing, and then you find out it's scripted. I think, like, I personally don't have a great opinion of that franchise, but I don't think there's another franchise that could be fucking screwed over as hard as the Angels would be if it turned out they don't get any shot except for 2014 in Mike Trout's entire career. That would be pretty hard to swallow for anybody.
Well, yeah, and that's when you kind of start to think to yourself, and it also can't be good for baseball. If like this thing was scripted and they are continuously denying the MLB an opportunity to see Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani in the playoffs, like that can't be good for business, right? Especially, a guy like Ohtani, right? Because he brings such an international audience that you would think that baseball would need a guy like that in there because, more people are going to watch the game in Japan if Ohtani's in the playoffs than probably all of America combined. Because, I mean, you saw what happened with the World Baseball Classic. The ratings were through the roof. And it was
Yeah.
because the Japanese audience embraced the World Baseball Classic so much.
Yeah, that was insane.
Yeah, and it was actually a pretty good World Baseball Classic. Honestly, I don't know why people are like, "Oh, well, this is bad for baseball," and it just it injures players. It's like, yeah, you're right, it does injure players, but the difference is it's way more entertaining than watching spring training. I'm sorry,
Oh yeah,
spring training
definitely.
spring. I love baseball. You've known me for years. I love baseball, and I know you do too. Maybe sometimes we don't like all like the stuff that's happening in baseball. Like I don't love the Dodgers deferring all this money right now. That's a topic for another day, literally. But what I don't like is spring training. It's boring. There's nothing to watch. You're watching the good players for 2 or 3 innings, and the rest of it's literally like watching paint dry. And I love minor league baseball too. But the difference is, if I want to watch these minor leaguers, I'm going to go to a minor league game because at least I know those guys are going to work hard. But almost in spring training, you're really not seeing that minor leaguer be at his best because they're like, hey, Gunnar Henderson, right now, I want you to work on your power. So Gunnar Henderson's going to go up there for the Orioles during spring training and try to hit a home run every single at bat because that's what the team wants him to work on. If you're a pitcher, hey, Andrew Heaney, you've been sucking the last 2 years. Your changeup sucks. It's flat. Go out there and throw nothing but changeups. And they're getting rocked, but the changeup looks good. That's what the team looks at. So, you see Gunnar Henderson's batting like .083, but he's got 9 homers. And you're like, this guy sucks. He hits home runs, but he's like Adam Dunn, home run or a strikeout. So that's what I hate about spring training.
I'll say even with everything you just said, spring training in person, I'll still do.
Oh, well, yeah,
But
yeah. That's different though. I mean, that's because you haven't watched baseball in months. So, spring training just
right.
kind of there's something kind of magical about it. I mean, I know
Yeah,
that
definitely.
sounds very fairy-ish, but there's something special about spring training.
Well, but what I was going to say is people that are paying to watch spring training on TV, especially like me, who's literally on the other coast of where my team is playing, what the hell are you doing paying for that? That is insane.
Um, do I pay for it? I mean, because I have the MLB subscription right through the app. I live in
Oh,
Texas, so I get to watch most of the Angels games, assuming they're not playing the Astros or the Rangers. Which, by the way, how stupid is that? If they're playing in Houston, which is over 4 hours away from my house, I can't watch the Angels play the
I,
Astros because they're like, oh, it's the same territory. It's 4 hours. That's not the same
I
territory.
I can top that
Okay.
because when the Orioles were making their West Coast tour, living in San Diego, I could not watch them face the Rockies, the Astros, the Rangers, the Mariners, Dodgers, Angels, and who else? There was one more so the Diamondbacks, and then there was one more that just blew my mind.
Seattle?
Not even in the same time zone, man.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. You said not the same time zone because
Yeah.
originally I was like, blew my mind. I was like, oh, Seattle? Because like, okay, Angels, Dodgers, Padres, you can't see the Orioles play them. Yeah, it sucks, but okay, like that makes sense. San Diego for sure. You live in San Diego, they're
Yeah, you
like,
can
oh,
justify that.
yeah, you broke ass, go pay for cable. But I mean, who has cable these days? You know what I mean? That's the other thing. But the the Angels and Dodgers, like it starts to get kind of iffy even there because like, well, I mean, you live like an hour and a half away. So okay, whatever. Like I understand maybe if you live in Oceanside, you can't watch them play the Angels. Like that's like 45 minutes away, maybe. But yeah, I mean, Arizona, Colorado, you should be able to watch. That's not even close.
No. And the one time that I did drive from my house to Dodger Stadium to see the Orioles play, took us 4 hours to get there.
Only 4 hours, huh?
Yeah.
That's not that bad. Dude, you've went to Universal
Oh,
Studios with me enough times to know. Like sometimes it takes forever to get up there.
yeah. But
Yeah.
that's much different going to a place where you know you're going to have fun compared to going to Dodger Stadium where let's just say on the way out me and my at the time girlfriend were taking off the Oriole jerseys and making sure no one knew who we were voting for.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So, I mean, that's kind of where I am on the whole. Like, would I still watch if it was scripted? Like, I'd like to say, like, yeah, yeah, of course. But, like, I think it's really going to depend on the state of that particular sport at the time.
Yeah. I
Because, like
I
I
think
said,
also
oh, go ahead.
it's really hard to justify somebody having to go through a rebuild if it's all scripted. So, you know,
Yeah, that's
pretty
true.
much all my life, every team I've followed in any sport except for motorsports has been in a rebuild permanently. So that would really be a pisser to find out I dedicated all those sorrowful tears just for no reason.
Yeah, could you imagine? You
Uh,
sat, you sat through, I mean, some pretty
the
bad old.
2014 playoffs, both of us just having to watch the freaking Royals, who should not have been in the playoffs, get freaking on a roll.
Well, I don't know. I mean, can we say that because they went on the next year to win? So it's like, they
I can
obviously were a good
I can
team.
stand by the fact that no, they should not have been there, and this is going to be bitter Oriole fan talk 100%. But Sergio Perez the next year in 2015 got caught before Game 7 of the World Series with pine tar
Yeah,
on his shin guards,
Pine
and
Bar.
then magically all of the Royal starters started not pitching as well. So that's pretty. Honestly, I view that worse than the Astro scandal. And again, of course, an Orioles fan would say that, but no, that was so crazy that there was no punishment for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really weird the stuff that they do punish players for and the stuff they don't punish players for.
Yeah.
I mean, you had the whole like sticky situation. Was
Hmm.
that what, two off seasons ago?
I
Where they just
think
magically
so.
started cracking down on that? Like, oh, they're like, oh,
Yeah.
you care today, just starting today, huh?
Yeah. And as an Orioles fan, I was really happy to see that because I know that the Yankees have been cheating for years. There's no way you can tell me they haven't. But then also
Well, yeah, Michael
Don,
Pineda, right?
who's that?
The guy on the Yankees who had the pine tar on his neck.
Oh, I can't remember everyone right now, but I think that did happen.
Yeah, and that was before the crackdown. This was like
Oh
years
yeah,
ago, like
yeah. But I was gonna say John Means, who was our best starter, magically he wasn't pitching well anymore, so that came back to bite us.
yeah, dude, John Means. I remember going to a game at Camden Yards in 2021. I want to say April. It was a Sunday game against the Oakland A's. And I was cheering for the Orioles to win. And John Means had like a no-hitter going into like the fifth or the sixth inning. That guy looked really good. I think I went
Yeah.
to my hotel that night and immediately added him on my MLB The Show team. But for whatever reason, he's never good on the show. I don't know if you've played it lately. But yeah,
You
he's
will
never good
not
on
get
it.
me to spend money on that game again because even when the Orioles had some talented players, and I know that Chris Davis obviously hit his slump, but before his slump, he was still a freaking stud and he was always rated like an average player. So
Maybe they
you'll
knew
never get me to
something.
spend mony on that.
Maybe they knew something that Orioles fans just
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah, that it was scripted.
There you go. So I slowly starting to tie things to the end here. I want to bring up what happened with the NHL draft because that was kind of a moment where a lot of hockey fans were like, okay, if there was a time where I can see this being scripted or fixed or rigged, whatever term you want to use, it was that. So, for anybody not familiar with hockey, so the NHL draft has been doing this for years where they have a lottery. Like, I think, obviously, the worse you are, the greater chance you have of getting a higher pick, meaning closer to number one. So, like, the three worst teams in hockey last year were the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Ducks, and the Chicago Blackhawks. The Chicago Blackhawks are one of the original teams in the NHL, right? So they're one of
Yeah,
like the Golden Boys,
the
you
original
know,
six.
yeah. The NHL loves this team. So with that being said, Patrick Kane was their franchise guy. That was their Mike Trout, their LaDainian Tomlinson, whatever franchise player you want to insert. That was their guy. Okay, he was there forever. A lot of people thought he was going to retire a Blackhawk. It didn't end up happening. He ended up getting traded at the trade deadline last year to the Arizona Coyotes for a split second, who then shipped him to the New York Rangers. It was a three-team trade. So all that being said, he went to New York, absolutely sucked, by the way, completely ruined their chances of winning a Stanley Cup because they were the odds-on favorites going into the Stanley Cup playoffs. I think there was a couple of other reasons, but a lot of people blame Patrick Kane. Was it his fault? Maybe it wasn't. But anyway, all this just to say the Chicago Blackhawks lose their franchise player and who was their second best player? Didn't they also lose him?
Well, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't think it was the second. I think it was the third, but then you could argue that second and third best are really side by side, but
That's fair. That's fair.
that's semantics anyway.
Yeah. So they lose this group, these two players who are key pieces to their franchise forever. They're part of all their Stanley Cup runs, of this, the last couple of decades. 'Cause I think they won what, like three Stanley Cups lately?
I don't remember how many, but Patrick Kane was definitely the stud. I mean, everybody knew his name if you followed hockey.
Yeah.
And it's embarrassing that I can't think of the second person, but same
Yeah,
same
because he's
applies
another
to
big
him
name.
too.
Yeah, another
Yeah.
big name. I'm having a brain fart on it too. So all this to say, they lose those key pieces to the franchise, and they're like, "Hey, we're going all in on a rebuild." And then coincidentally, they jump up in this draft lottery to get the number one slot over the Anaheim Ducks, over the Columbus Blue Jackets. And I'm not going to say that the Anaheim Ducks weren't at one point kind of one of those like shining star franchises for the NHL, but certainly never to the caliber of the Blackhawks. I mean, the Blackhawks, the Detroit Red Wings, those are kind of like the names when you think of the NHL, right? The LA Kings, those kind of names. But yeah, the Blackhawks get the number one overall pick, even though they were not projected to get the number one pick. I think number one was projected to be the Columbus Blue Jackets all along. and then the Ducks. Okay, so all this for me to ask you this long-winded question. Do you think in any way, shape, or form the NHL dipped their toe into this?
I think yes, obviously, but even more so, the fact that there's a draft for or a lottery for the draft, that is them interfering to begin with. I cannot see any justifiable reason to have a lottery. The point of the draft is so that the teams that did really horribly have a chance at not being at the freaking bottom anymore, so that that franchise can still make money, so that they won't have to relocate the team because as much as some people talk about, oh yeah, franchises move all the time and they want it to happen, trust me, the Chargers are a great example of the NFL not wanting them to move. It happens a lot. And why you would suddenly create a lottery system for the draft, I can only think is to manipulate it. Now, if you manipulate it to the point that you're giving it to some team over another team, or if you just give another team better odds, it doesn't matter. I don't see how anyone can justify that. I don't see how it benefits anybody. It's one of the things I've hated the most about all sports for a long time.
Yeah. So, I mean, that, they all, I'm like fumbling my words here. That's what I hate, when you're doing a podcast because you're like trying to gather your thoughts so quickly. The tough thing is they preach this whole fake narrative, and maybe it's not fake. Maybe we're looking into this too much about like, oh, well, we're trying to promote parity to stop teams from tanking. Okay, no matter which way you slice it and dice it, there will always be teams tanking, right? Just because it gives them better odds to get a better draft pick. So no matter what you try to do, there's always going to be teams that are tanking to try to improve their odds, right? You can agree with that.
Yes, but also I don't think it really happens as much as people want to say. Again, being the Orioles fan, I saw some dismal years. I don't think there's a single game they intentionally threw. They put Michael Givens out there, and Michael Givens does what Michael Givens does and lose fucking games. Now you can say they were winning the whole time and then they tanked at the end, or you can say that player was really that bad genuinely, and that's what I subscribe to. I don't think
Yeah.
anybody actually tanks as hard as they say.
No. So I listened to an Arizona Coyotes podcast. I'll give them a free shout out, PHNX Coyotes. And they always talk about the fact that, like, especially last year, because the Coyotes did better last year than they were supposed to, right? They were supposed to be the worst team in hockey last year. That was the projections. Instead, they were like, I think like number 7 or so. So with that being said, people were like, well, Coyotes fans at least, were like, well, why are we better than we thought? And they were saying, well, you can't convince players to tank. It doesn't work like that. So no, I don't think that, Chris Davis in 2019, when the Orioles had traded these key pieces, I don't think that Chris Davis is going up there going 0 for what was it, like two? No, it wasn't 0 for 250, but you remember he had that horrible stretch where
Yeah.
he got like one single hit.
And you
Literally,
know
he
what's
got one
so
hit.
frustrating about that is that if that season happened right now, he would have got a hit within his first five at bats
Yeah,
because
because the
there
shift.
was the shift.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. But then you look at guys like Albert Pujols and you think about how much better of a career he could have had
Absolutely.
if it wasn't for the shift.
Although,
So
and then you talk about his bat and how it was oversized, and that's an interesting conversation too.
yeah, that's fair. Okay, maybe well, I think I'd like to do an episode with you about the shift too. We just need to start writing these potential episodes down. Anyway, so it's you can't convince these players to completely shit the bed, right?
Yeah.
But what you can do is convince ownership, the Coyotes, the Orioles, the Athletics, whatever, to not invest on the product.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But I don't think it takes much convincing for the Ducks. That is a very poorly run franchise.
Well, what's the owners? The Sam Wellies?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I do know the only reason that the former general manager got fired is because his rehab was made public. Otherwise, we would have kept that man who did insane moves in office, and they didn't have an issue with that. So I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I do think it's just it's so hard to be like, well, it was a coincidence that the Blackhawks got the number one pick when they weren't the worst team. That's like the one time when things like that happen. That's when I'm like, I don't know. It seems awfully fishy that the
Yeah,
Blackhawks would have done it. If it was like another team, and I'm not just saying like the Coyotes because I'm a Coyotes fan, like, they were like the seventh worst team. Like if they jump up to one, it's like, well, I mean, that wasn't very likely either. But then how come the Coyotes, though they've been the worst team in hockey a couple times, how come they've never gotten the number one overall pick ever?
yeah,
The
yeah,
highest they've ever gotten was three,
yep.
and they've
And
been the worst team in hockey. So
the
it's like,
Orioles last year, or whenever the most recent one was, I believe the highest they could have got was like 15 to 17, somewhere in there, and they ended up getting 19th, right?
uh,
But everybody else in that bracket, because I forget, I think it's five spots that you can pick from.
yeah, it's
Everybody
the
else
top
in the
five.
Okay.
Yeah,
So everybody else in that bracket are people that definitely have more support as far as MLB, caring about them, and it's the same thing. How can you justify that? It's an awful big coincidence when it keeps happening every year, and when it happens to the same four teams that you guys don't really promote on your network, that you exclude out of like the Papa John's Grand Slam thing that they had on their social media. It's
yeah, that
really,
was fun.
really suspicious.
the Does Peyton Manning still own part of Papa John's? Since you brought it up,
I think Shaq owns it now, doesn't he?
I think he might have a share. I don't know. All I know is that Papa John himself is out, probably for the
Yeah.
best.
Oh, definitely for the best.
Okay,
So,
so the last thing I know you wanted to talk about was Patrick Kane, unless you have something else about this particular topic.
well, I was gonna say, just to kind of wrap it all up, like you had a really good point with the WWE thing. I think if sports all were scripted, you're gonna see a huge decline in football and baseball and hockey, and you're gonna see a huge incline in motorsports. And that's just simply because you can have an engine failure, you can have a pit crew member who leaves a freaking lug nut loose and the tire comes off. If NASCAR, for example, was able to have every single position of every single race scripted, that would be pretty damn impressive. And I don't
That's
think
fair.
it would really matter that much if it was scripted, because that would be just an incredible feat to make that happen.
Well, see, but like that's why I also talk about something like MLB because it's like, could you possibly script Major League Baseball? Because think about all
I
the
got an
variables.
example.
Okay, please.
Um, Derek Jeter getting a hold of the Marlins franchise and then giving Giancarlo Stanton to the Yankees for nothing and just tanking that entire franchise.
Yeah, it's
That's a little fucked up.
Yeah, but that's also like, does the MLB really care about these Florida baseball teams? I mean, they say they do, but you have the Tampa Bay Rays playing in one of the worst stadiums. I've been to it. It's not great. Honestly, I know that they're considered the second worst. A lot of people consider Oakland the worst. I would take the Oakland Coliseum over Tropicana Field any day.
Yeah, agreed. I
Um,
think I think that the Rays didn't do themselves any favor when they had that proposal to play half their home games in Montreal,
Montreal,
though.
no. No, yeah, they definitely shot themselves in the foot. It'll be
Yeah.
really interesting to see. Like, I wonder in our lifetime, does Florida lose their baseball teams in our lifetime? I know that there's talk
Not the
right now.
Marlins.
You don't think so? Because I know right
No.
now, like, there's all that talk about, like, oh, the Rays are getting that new stadium. Here's the renderings, blah, blah, blah. Hey, it's all talk until I see shovels hit the ground.
Yeah,
At that point,
absolutely.
then I'll actually believe it. I will not believe it, even if we see renderings. The owner can come out and be like, we're building it tomorrow until there's legitimate, like not even shovels in the ground. Forget that. Until I'm seeing an excavator going in there, actually moving foundation in the earth, that's when I'm like, okay, it's happening. But it's going to be really interesting to see if Florida loses their baseball teams. You hear all the time like, oh, the Oakland A's are going to Las Vegas. We're going to see if that happens.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know, man. That's
No,
another topic for another day.
I firmly believe that if anybody's moving next, it's going to be the Rays. And let's say they do build the stadium and they get it done before 2025 in some miraculous feat. Uh, they will move the Marlins into the new stadium and put the Rays wherever city they're going to send them to. There's no way the Rays stay there. By the time we're 10 years older, so 2020 or 2034, there's no way the Rays are still in Tampa. They are the number one team every year. They always have the best start and they can't draw a crowd. There's no way they stay there.
Yeah, well, and what adds insult to injury is so WWE just had the Royal Rumble at their Tropicana Field, and they had God, what was it, 48,000 people? They had the biggest crowd in Tropicana Field history show up. So, like, and I understand, like, that's an unfair
Ugh.
comparison, right? I mean, we're talking about a baseball team. Baseball is a long con. People are playing all the time. And it's a playoff game like on a random Tuesday. So I get it. And we're comparing Royal Rumble, which I know you don't really care much about wrestling, but that's still for some people attending, that's a once in a lifetime thing, right? They're not going to go maybe ever again. So I understand it's an
Yeah.
unfair comparison, but
I don't
still,
think it's that unfair.
you don't think so?
No, because if you're comparing regular season, okay, yeah, but there was the playoff game where the Rays were against the Yankees. I don't remember what year this was, but everyone was favoring the Rays. The Rays won the first game and they won the second game. And they still had no attention when they were favorited to win against the team everybody hates. So
That's
I would
fair.
say it's very sad that WWE at any capacity for any situation is able to outsell the MLB. That should not happen. That's devastating. But yeah, I don't think it's unfair. I think that is still a huge statement.
That's fair. I mean, but once again, I mean, WWE is an international company, right? I mean, I understand baseball is an international sport, and MLB is trying to be international with doing these like games in London and Mexico City and whatever. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, we're comparing what's in some cases a once in a lifetime event for people. Like there's people who fly just to watch that event because they're never going to go to Royal Rumble again. And we're comparing it to the Rays, which, yeah, like you said, they have multiple years where they're the best team in baseball. We've seen that a few times, and they just never get over the hump.
Yeah. But I mean, remember they were off to like an 0-16 start this season.
Yeah, it was something incredible.
Yeah, I still can't get any crowd.
That's fair. And I mean, they have some exciting players. I mean,
Yeah.
they have Randy Rosarena. I think most people like him. He's fun to watch. He's pretty non-controversial. I know you're an Orioles fan, but you know, has fun. That's fine. Obviously they had Wander Franco and he had potential, but he's a dirtbag for sure. Lock that man up immediately. I don't think that's much of a hot take. I can say that here. Um, they had Blake Snell, they had Tyler Glasnow. So, they've definitely had some talent go through there, but yeah, I don't know what they're doing as an organization, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So anything else you have in closing on any of the topics we've hit?
No, I don't think so. Patrick Kane is a great player, and it's sad he got taken out like that in Canada. But other than that, yeah, I think
What city
covered
were they in?
everything. You know what? It was Edmonton, I believe.
The Edmonton Oilers.
I
I don't know
I'm not
why. I thought you were going to
100%
say like the
sure.
Calgary Flames because I think
No,
they're
no,
a pretty
no.
big team, right? Like their players are large. They have some big boys on that team.
Yeah, it was. I'm pretty sure a blue team, and I know Oilers are orange and blue, but whoever it was doesn't matter. It's all the same in Canada.
Well, as long as it wasn't the Canucks, because oh,
No, for
what a
sure it
name!
wasn't them.
Well, what a name, the Canucks.
Oh, they earn it.
All right. Well, on behalf of William and I on the Unfiltered Sports Network, thanks a lot for joining us, and we hope to see you guys here for a future episode. Goodbye, everybody.
Welcome to the Unfiltered Sports Network, where we believe in keeping it real and telling it like it is. No more are the days of sugarcoating or ESPN-style politically correct takes. No. This is the place where real sports fans gather to talk about the stuff that truly matters. From the latest headlines, transactions, to controversial news, we've got you covered. Join us as we dive into the unfiltered world of sports, where passion meets authenticity. Hit that like and subscribe button for more raw, honest, and uncensored discussions that will leave you craving for more. This is the Unfiltered Sports Network, where real sports fans talk about real shit.